Hello and welcome, a very warm welcome to the Green Bean. It's episode 69 and my name's Katie. If you've not been here before, a very warm welcome. I'm chatting to you from my studio in the Bannau Brycheiniog National Park in South Wales, where I live with my partner and my cute little dog Jack, who has neglected to sit with me as I chat to you today, and I'm very sorry about it, but fear not, you'll see him out on our walk in this episode. Before I dive in, I wanted to say a couple of thank yous. First, I want to say thank you to everyone who left kind and thoughtful comments on my last video about my finger mishap with the sewing machine. I'm happy to report that I'm free from the bandage. The finger is healing really well. It's still, I'm going to say different rather than sore. It's a little tender and a little numb in places, so it's not back to how it was. It may never be back to how it was, but it's very well healed, and yeah, I'm back to doing all normal activities: driving, knitting, even sewing, as you'll see later in this episode. But yeah, I just wanted to say thank you for everyone who left such thoughtful and caring comments. I was appreciative of all of them. I also want to say a quick thank you to everyone who supports my videos financially over on Patreon or on Ko-fi. Patreon is the main place where I share my videos, and supporters get access to them early and without adverts, as well as loads of extra videos. Recently over there I've been creating a series where I go back into my old episodes, dig out my old projects and review them, look at whether they've been worn and loved or whether they're still languishing in a project bag in a corner somewhere. Whatever happened to them, I'm digging those out and going over them over on Patreon. I've also been sharing an experimental hiking vlog. I went out on the mountain in the snow recently and I made a fun little video about that. There's lots to discover if you are thinking about becoming a member over there. There's a whole archive of years of extra videos that you would gain access to. And I'm just so grateful. I couldn't make these videos without financial support, and Patreon enables me as a creative person to have a reliable monthly income, which before that I had never had, and I always had to have a supplementary job on the side so that I could know month by month that I was going to be able to pay my bills, and Patreon makes that possible. So huge thanks to everyone who is part of that. I'm super grateful, and if financial support is not something that's accessible to you, I totally understand. There are many other ways to support what I do, including sharing, telling people about it, leaving a comment, subscribing if you're not subscribed already. All of those things help, and you know, help more people who might be interested in my work find their way over here to my little corner of the internet. Without further ado, let's tell you about the creative projects I've been up to. I've got some drawing to share with you. I've got a new knitting cast on and a sewing project as well. So I hope you enjoy the episode, and let's head out first for a walk with Jack. Sometimes when I'm working on a drawing project, it takes me many months and in some cases many years to finish a project, and I end up feeling like I've talked to you about it 100 times before I bring it to fruition. And other times I will quietly work away on something behind the scenes and either forget to tell you about it or just it comes together so quickly that I don't even have time to tell you about it. And the project I've picked today is one of those. It's kind of crept up on me, and all of a sudden I have a finished project that I haven't shown to you before, which is this little scratchboard piece of cats playing with yarn. And the inspiration behind this piece was my ribbons that I sell in my shop. I design and create ribbons with a vertical printed design that is specifically intended for lining the button band of a cardigan, whether it's a cardigan that you've cut the steek on or just an ordinary cardigan button band. I find a lot of ribbons tend to have horizontal patterns, so I wanted to create some that have a vertical pattern. I have one with sheep and I have one with woodland creatures, and as a unashamed dog person, I am often aware that the things that I create for my shop lean towards dog themed things, and I've been wanting to add something more cat related. I know a lot of you are cat lovers and cat parents, and you know, I don't dislike cats myself. I just have never known and loved a cat, and the reason I love dogs so much is I've known and loved many dogs. So yes, the inspiration was cats, and obviously cats playing with yarn, and so I've been working away on this little scratchboard piece, and yeah, all of a sudden here it is, a finished thing. So my plan is to turn this design into ribbon. I will scan it in and remove some of the black background so it's a more stark black and white contrast, and I will send it off to my ribbon producers who will screen print it onto the 100% unbleached cotton ribbon, so I'll then be able to sell it by the metre. However, looking at this piece of artwork now, holding it up in the long narrow format that it's in, it also says bookmark to me, and it's a long while since I've had any bookmarks in my shop, but I feel very much like I need to turn it into a bookmark as well. So why not? Ribbon and bookmarks with cats on is what this artwork is destined to become. Luckily, in the process of finishing it really quickly without having a chance to talk to you about it, I did record some of the footage of me working on it, so I can show you a little bit of the process, even if I haven't been able to talk about it much before now. So scratchboard, as I'm sure many of you know, is one of my favourite mediums to draw with. It's a layer of china clay, which is white, overlain with a layer of India ink, which is black, and you make marks by scratching with a little metal stylus. You make white marks rather than black marks, so it's a process of scraping away negative space, I guess. It's a little bit like the same process you would go through for making a lino cut or some kind of printmaking, but obviously it creates a one-off original piece rather than a piece that you can print from. And I don't know why I got into loving scratchboard in particular. It's such a slow and meticulous medium, so I guess that explains one of the reasons why it appeals to me as a slow and meticulous, detail-orientated kind of person. But I also really love creating artwork in black and white, and scratchboard is kind of the epitome of stark black and white. I love the contrast and being able to build up the tone with just the different kind of marks you can make with it. I really enjoy it, and I have been working with it for several years now. It's very much a firm favourite medium of mine. I'm working on a new cast on. You probably can't see it from how I'm holding it, so let me turn it the right way out and show you. This is the Houll or Houll, I'm not quite sure, hat by Ella Gordon. It's a beautiful all over stranded colourwork hat, and the reason I cast it on is because I wanted a new hat, but specifically I wanted a hat that would look gorgeous without a pom-pom. I'm sure you've seen my dino hat by Sari Nordland, which I wear basically all the time. It has a lovely big pom-pom on the top, but as I'm doing more and more hiking, I'm finding I want a smaller hat that squashes down more easily into my rucksack when I don't want to wear it. So I thought I would cast on this hat, which I've had in my queue for a long time. Such a beautiful, beautiful colourwork pattern, and I thought, it's, you know, the way that Ella's designed it, the colourwork pattern continues right the way into the crown. It has a beautiful design at the top. You wouldn't want to put pom-pom on there to hide it, so it was the perfect hat for what I was looking for. I am not using the recommended yarn or the recommended colours because naturally I wanted my hat to be green. For the most part I'm using Jamieson's of Shetland Spindrift in. My main colour is Pine, which is this lovely, lovely dark green with flecks of yellow in it. And then I've got a gradient of 3 colours, which are sort of yellowish green. So it goes from Bracken as the darkest, Pistachio is the second darkest, and then Lichen, my possibly favourite Jamieson's colour of all time, is the lightest. So those 3 colours make a lovely little gradient. And then there was meant to be a pop of colour, and I picked this colour, mustard, but when I put them together I thought actually the mustard looked a little bit restrained and muted, and when you want that really zingy pop of colour when you're doing Fair Isle, you want something out of character. You want a colour that you wouldn't normally choose because you often only work it in one line, so it really wants to pop against the others. And I remembered from ages ago when I made a pair of mittens for a friend who requested a really bright yellow that I had this kind of shocking tennis ball yellow in my stash. This isn't from Jamieson's, this is from Jalie, Rennie, which it's from their super soft lambswool range, I think, so it's a slightly different texture than the Shetland, but it's the same weight, and it was the colour that was just right. And it was a good choice because I love how that really, really bright acid yellow pops against these other more muted colours. I think if I'd gone for the mustard it wouldn't have shown up and looked as vibrant, so I'm really pleased that I had some of this lying around in my stash. As you can see, it's almost a brand new ball. I've barely used any of it. It's just for those really bright pops. It's perfect. So I've made pretty good progress on this project so far. It's a one size pattern written for a gauge of 30 stitches in 10 centimeters, which is tight for me as a very loose knitter. You've probably noticed the needles I'm working on are tiny. I didn't do a swatch because it's a hat, it's a small project. If it looked like the gauge was going wrong, I could easily rip it out and start again. I just used my instinct and cast on with the smallest needles I had, which were 1.5mm. I've tried it on, the size seems good. I haven't measured the gauge, but that doesn't seem to matter to me as much as it, you know, it fits on my head. That's the most important thing. So yeah, it wouldn't be my choice to knit on such tiny needles, but I really wanted this exact design and I didn't want to do any of the maths of changing the gauge. I do love how it looks, and I love the detail that you can get working at such a fine gauge. So, you know, it's okay. If it was a garment, I would not want to work on 1.5mm needles, but it's just a hat, so it'll be fine. Now, when I knit Fair Isle or stranded colourwork, I work inside out, and whenever I mention that I do that, I get a lot of people asking questions saying, can you show how to do it? And this project is the perfect one. When I say work inside out, I don't mean like I'm knitting backwards or anything that's complicated like that. It's very straightforward. So if I was to work with my work the right way out, this is it's rolling up a little, so it's tricky for you to see, but I would be working like this in the round with the right side of my work facing me, and I would knit along, and when I got to the end of my magic loop I would move the needles around and so, and the right side of the work would always be facing outwards. When I say working inside out, I just mean flipping the work inside out, as simple as that. And I still have the right side of my work facing me, but the bulk of the work, instead of being at the back away from me while I'm working the right side out, it simply comes to the front. It sits closer to me while I'm working, and I'm still working with the right side facing. I just have the right side facing inwards, and all that does is it evens up the tension a little bit when you go around the corners. If you're using double pointed needles or the magic loop, it just means that your float has to travel that little bit further around the join, and it stops you from getting, sometimes I found when I worked colour work before doing it inside out, I would get a kind of folded ridge where I went around the corner between my needles, and this doesn't happen when I knit inside out. So it's really good, particularly for small circumference colour work like socks or hats or sleeves. And I should say, I did not invent this technique. I picked it up from my friend, the lovely designer Ella Austin, and it was just brilliant. It was absolutely game-changing for improving my colourwork tension. So all credit to Ella for teaching me that technique. It's really helped, and if you struggle with your colourwork tension being too tight or a bit patchy, I definitely recommend giving it a go. The other thing to note about this project, where I've disobeyed the pattern, you've probably spotted already because of how much it's rolling, is that there isn't a ribbed edging, and that is not according to the pattern. Obviously, the pattern has you cast on and work a section of rib before you start the colour work. I started with a provisional cast on, intending to do the ribbing later for two reasons, one of which is to be completely honest, I just wanted to cut straight to the fun part and knit the colour work. I do not enjoy knitting ribbing, and it's always a bit of a thing that puts me off starting a project. So I just did a crochet provisional cast on here in this orange contrasting yarn, and got straight on with the colour work. Also, because I was experimenting with needle size, I didn't want to knit a whole load of ribbing and then rip it out and have to re-knit it if my colour work gauge was wrong. So in that way I got straight to the colour work. I got a sense that the hat is going to be the right size. I will finish the colour work in the crown, and then I will pick up this provisional cast on and knit my ribbing downwards. So then I get the benefit of almost knitting the hat top down, so I get to try it on, check the fit, see how long I want the ribbing to be. The pattern just has a single section of ribbing, but because it's going to be a walking hat and I like to keep my ears nice and warm and keep the wind out, I sense I will probably knit an extra long section of ribbing and make enough to turn up. But because I'm knitting it downwards, I can decide that as I go rather than having to decide it before I've even knitted the hat, if that makes sense. I've been really enjoying this project so far. The thing I love about geometric stranded colourwork patterns in particular is once you've knitted a few rounds and got your pattern established, they're very intuitive. You can obviously you do need to refer to the chart, but you can almost read looking at the row below and expect what colours, what your stitches are going to be doing on the next row. So it's not quite complete relaxation knitting like plain stocking stitch or garter stitch, but it's one step up from there for me in terms of how relaxing and soothing it is to knit. There's no kind of complicated stitch patterns or anything that needs to be remembered. It's just, occasionally checking your chart, but really I find it very intuitive to follow a pattern like this. After a few weeks break, I finally felt brave enough to get back to my sewing machine, and it took a little bit of courage, I'm going to be honest. The first time I sat there with the power on and I was ready to stitch, I kind of came out in a sweat all over. I was really nervous. So the first thing I did was just some plain zigzag stitches. I edged a piece of fabric that I was going to pre-wash just to get used to the motions again and get over the fear that I was absolutely full of after my little sewing machine accident. But it was only a matter of time, really, before I was going to crack on with another sewing project. And on Patreon recently I was sharing the prototype for this project, which was actually the project I was sewing when the accident happened. So I felt very much like I needed to take that to completion. And now I'm working on my next actual sewing project, which is a brand new swimsuit. The pattern I'm using is in fact a men's gymnastics leotard pattern. It's from Jalie, a French-Canadian pattern company, and obviously I've had to make adaptations to the pattern to make it fit my body. I cut a much smaller size for the top half and a much larger size for the bottom half, and I used my French curves to grade between them around the waist. And I was very lucky and grateful that the prototype fit me really well. So now I am ready to start working on it in my real fabric and what a real fabric I have chosen. It's this gorgeous print from Spoonflower. It's by a designer called Francisca Reyes, and I'm just in love with this print. I found it by using lichen as a search term, but what it came up with is this amazing kind of frog spawn pondweed design in shades of green. I absolutely love it. I had it printed on Spoonflower's Sport Lycra fabric, which is 100% synthetic. I don't love synthetic fabric for most purposes, but for swimwear it's perfect, and I've used this fabric before for swimwear. It washes really well, it wears really well, so I know that it's just going to be absolutely brilliant. So I'm ready to crack on with sewing this project. I do not own a serger, and given my ability to have accidents with a sewing machine, I think that's a good thing that I don't have a sewing machine with an actual blade attached to it. So I sew stretch fabrics and woven fabrics on my standard sewing machine, and I edge them with a zigzag stitch. I find that that's good enough to prevent fraying, and it's stretchy enough for any work that I want to do with stretch fabrics. So I'll be using the zigzag stitch to both seam this swimsuit and to finish off the edges nicely. There's actually not a great deal of sewing to be done with this pattern. There's only a few pattern pieces. There's a front and a back, a gusset for between the legs, and the armhole pieces are just 4, 2 for the front and 2 for the back. It's very straightforward to sew actually. The hardest and fiddliest bit is inserting the elastic, which is where I was closely manipulating it with my fingers when my incident happened a while ago, and so I will be taking extra care and running my sewing machine extra slowly while I work around this bit. But that's the fiddliest part, and actually this project is going to come together very quickly now. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of The Green Bean. It's always a pleasure to sit down and have a chat with you, share my creative projects in progress and a little bit of my love for the landscape here in South Wales. Thank you for being here and for watching, and I hope that whatever projects you're working on, they're progressing smoothly. I will see you soon. Take care. Bye.